In this video, I want to look at how we can use logical operators in Python. So in our conditional statements, and by logical operators, I just mean and, or, and not. And also, I want to look at ways we can polish up our conditional blocks of code to make them look, to make them a little more simple and a little bit more like professional looking. So I have some functions in this program here that deal with weather. They're just kind of simple, silly problems, but they should demonstrate what we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to show here. So the first function says, we're trying to determine if the weather is nice out, and I just want this function to return true or false. And so I have defined nice as having a temperature between 65 and 80 inclusive and not raining. And so if I were thinking of this on a number line, right, and I think a lot of times, just going back to your Algebra 1, we've got our 65 and our 80, and we're going to shade in between. And I said inclusive, so that means we're going to color in the dots. And so the way I would write this algebraically, I would just say the temperature, if I were to describe this number line, is greater than or equal to 65, and the temperature is less than or equal to 80, okay? And so in Python, we would just code it like this. I'll go over here, and I'm going to say if temperature is greater than or equal to, and we can't type a greater than or equal to symbol, so we just mush the two signs together like that, is greater than or equal to 65, and the temperature is less than or equal to 80. And then we'll return true, else return false. And so when I run this, we get our output over here, and you can see it's not quite right because here is a nice day, and that's right, and here it's a nice day, and that's right. 85 is too hot, so that's not a nice day. 77 is a nice temperature, but it's raining, so it shouldn't be nice outside, and yet it returned true, so no problem. We just add is and raining is equal to false. And so now when we run it again, okay, everything is perfect. But there's some things that we can do to simplify this. Okay, one, you may recall from Algebra 1, right, when you have a number line like this and you're shading in between, we can actually write this as 65 is less than or equal to the temperature is less than or equal to 80. And Python allows you to write compound inequalities with and like this as well. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to clean this up. And I'm just going to say less than or equal to. And so this is using an and as well. All right. And if you've programmed in other languages, most that I've seen don't allow you to express inequalities like that, but Python fortunately does. So, all right. So everything still works. But there's something else going on in this code, and that is right here. This is a big expression that ultimately simplifies to true or false. So this statement, right, when it's true, we return true. And when this statement right here is false, we return false. And so actually expressing this conditional block like this is unnecessary. What I could do is, and I'll show them side by side first before I delete it, but I could just simply return this entire expression right here. And it will have so this line of code right here and this code block here have the exact same effect. And this, you'll see this happen a lot. It's like when you're returning the, when something is true and you return true, and when something is false, you return false, just return the expression and you can save some code. Now, I think a lot of programmers have kind of a hard time with this logic at the beginning. And this, maybe you're more comfortable writing code like this, and that's okay. But I think this is something we should strive for. So I'm going to simplify that. Right. And there's something else going on here too. And this is with Boolean variables, right? Sometimes we say, we have a Boolean variable and we say, is it equal to true or is it equal to false? And I could actually simplify this and just use the operator not raining. And so now I have a much simpler block of code that has the exact same effect. So, and again, like, I think a lot of novice programmers like writing code like this because it's a little bit more clear that yes, there's a true/false variable, you know, and you're looking at seeing it is true or false inside that. But I think if you're looking at a more professionally written code or code written by a more experienced programmer, this is more likely what you'd see. So we can look for some one-liners here. All right, let's take a look at another one. So here we have is miserable. And so I've decided here now that the weather is miserable if it's below 30 or above 90. And I didn't say inclusive, so I guess what I'm saying now is I've got 30 and 90, and I'm shading above 90, and I'm shading below 30, and I didn't say inclusive, so I'm not coloring in the dots. Right, hard to see here, but that 90 is not colored in. So if we want to describe this in algebra, right, I would say the temp is less than 30, and since the arrows are pointing away, we use the operator or. The temp is greater than 90. And so in here, all right, I'm going to say, you know, I'll start out writing it. I'll say if temp is less than 30 or the temp is greater than 90, return true, else return false. Okay, and let me uncomment this block of code right here so we can test it out. And you can see I haven't dealt with the wind yet. It's temperature is my variable name. Okay, and so that's a miserable day. That's right. This is not a miserable day, so that's right. Right. The temperature is okay, but it's windy, so it should be true. And this one is not a miserable day, so that's fine. 80 and windy is fine, and 95 is too hot, so that should be true. So we have this one case where we have to worry about the wind. So now we have some choices. And, you know, one thing that could happen, right? One thing that we could do is we start to write, so, well, let's deal with the wind. So we say if windy equal to true, because really this whole block of code was for the not windy days. And I could copy this. And on the windy days, we just go below 50. And on the non-windy days, we go below 30. And we'll run this. All right. And so it works. All right. And so we check this day. That 40-degree windy day is miserable. But you know, we see a lot of duplicate code here. So you know, so let's see what we can fix up. Right. One thing is, you know, let's go to, you know, let's forget about the wind for a second again, and we'll go back to just that original block of code. You know, so one thing we have here is, you know, I have an expression that if it's true, I return true, and if it's false, I return false. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, I could just return that expression. So this works great for all of the non-windy days. And I don't want to duplicate this. Like I could say, you know, I could say, like, we'll get a little simpler. I could say if windy, actually, let's just go with not if windy. Yeah, windy, and we'll else. So this is my non-windy day one. We change that to 30. And so this is better. Right, so everything works now. But I have two lines of code that are essentially the same. So I have another thought, and that is, let's just make two variables. And I'll say low is equal to 30 and high is equal to 90, and then I only need one return statement, I can say low and high. And so, now this code works this code works except for on windy days. And I like to sometimes keep the one return statement and just do a conditional adjustment. So I can say if windy, and I can say windy equals true, right? Low is equal to 50. And now everything works. And I can simplify this too, because if windy is equal to true, I might as well just say if windy. And you can do that with Boolean variables. And so now we have one return statement that's abstract, written with some variables in it. And I think, this code clearly conveys the intent of the problem as well. You can tell, oh, if it's windy, the tolerable low temperature changes. So I think this is a good strategy sometimes, is write an abstract, like general return statement, and before you get to the return statement, make some kind of conditional change to the statement. So let's look at another one here, and this one is the is cozy, and so it says we're cozy when the temperature is above 70, unless we have a coat, and in which case we're cozy when the temperature is above 50. So this is if we have a coat. And so when I code this, what I could do is I kind of think of, I might write if, or actually we'll just go straight to the return statement this time. So we'll return, and I'll say the temperature is above 50, is above 70, and then I'll say or, right, and we'll describe this other number line, and I'll say the temperature is greater than 50, and you have a coat. And so this should work, and let's take a look. Right, notice how, right, I don't want to say if the statement is true, return true, and if the statement is false, return false. I'll just return the expression. And let me uncomment this, so when we run it, we'll actually see some output here. Okay, and there we go. So here's 75, and 75 is always cozy. 60 is not cozy when we don't have a coat, and that's right. And 60 is cozy if we do have a coat, so that one's good. And so that was simple enough, but I've got one more that I just want to, I wanted to put these side by side so we can compare them. And so now we're going to test for uncomfortable, and we are uncomfortable if the temperature is below 50 or above 80. So here's 50, and here's our 80. And we'll color the number line like that, right? So this is the temperature is less than 50, and the arrows are going away, so it's an or statement. So I'll say the temperature is greater than 80, right? So that's our number line. So in code, looks like this. Return temperature is less than 50, and I'll say or the temperature is greater than 80. And then it says only when you're outside, because we're always comfortable inside. So I'll say and you're outside. Okay. And so what's going to happen is right, so we'll check the temperature, see if it's between 50 and 80, right? And that is, or if it's below 50 or above 80, that would make us uncomfortable, but only if we're also outside. Okay, so we're going to say, and we have to be outside too, and that would make us uncomfortable. And so I'm going to run this, and you can see that this expression, looks very similar to this. And let's test. Oh, I got to uncomment this and run. Uncomment. And we'll run it. And let me do this. Blank line here so we can, this is the output for this last block. And uncomfortable at 70 degrees, and we're outside, and that's not uncomfortable. So that should be false. We're not uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, if it's a 40 degrees and outside, that definitely should be uncomfortable, all right, according to this, and that's right. But here it's 40 degrees and we're inside, and it says we're uncomfortable, and that's, that it doesn't seem like that's what this expression says. But here's the problem. Just like you have, PEMDAS, order of operations, with all your arithmetic operators, there's also an order of operations with ands and ors. And so when an expression like this gets evaluated in Python, it goes from right to left, and ands are going to get grouped, evaluated before ors. And so what ended up happening is these two expressions got grouped together. And so what my Python said is, I'm uncomfortable when the temperature is less than 50, or, right, and I don't care whether I'm inside or outside. So I'm always uncomfortable less than 50 here, or I'm uncomfortable when it's above 80 and I'm outside. So these two things got grouped together, but notice how below 50 didn't get grouped with the outside variable at all. And so sometimes when you have ands and ors in expressions, right, how you would say it in English, which may grammatically make sense, is not how Python's going to interpret it. And so we just have to include parentheses. And so when I put parentheses around these two expressions here, now I am checking to see if the temperature is in an intolerable range and I'm outside at the same time. And so when I run this, right now, I am not uncomfortable when it's 70 and I'm outside. I am uncomfortable when it's 40 and I'm outside, and I am not uncomfortable if it's 40 and I'm inside, and everything works. So that's just one last thing to be aware of, is that you have an order of operation with these logical operators as well. If there's a more complex statement, the nots will get evaluated first, then the ands, then the ors. One last thing too is parentheses aren't, it's like sometimes even if you don't need them, they're nice to have for just clarity, maybe. Like this expression up here, now that I look back at it, I think it's kind of tough to understand, how the grouping is. So maybe if I went ahead and grouped like that, now I'm cozy when the temperature is above 70, or I'm cozy when the temperature is above 50 and I have a coat. And while the code worked fine because of the way order of operations occur in Python, I think adding the parentheses makes the intent of this code even more clear. All right, so I hope this helps you out. And if you have any questions, let me know.